Did you know the best seeds for your garden don't come from the nursery? In fact, the seeds that will create the most robust and delicious fruits and vegetables come directly from your garden. This is because they are uniquely adapted to your growing conditions, better than anything you can buy from a fancy catalog or website. Through the magic of seed saving, it is quite possible to have the garden of your dreams. The best part is, saving your own seeds is surprisingly easy and fun. With a bit of instruction, anyone can become a seed-saving superstar. Let us teach you how in our free seed-saving webinar. Just text SEEDS to 33444 to sign up, or visit seedsavinghacked.org for more information. That's SEEDS to 33444, or visit seedsavinghacked.org.
You're listening to the Urban Farm Podcast, your partner in the Grow Your Own Food revolution. Whether you've just been introduced to urban farming or you're a lifelong advocate, we're sure you'll leave feeling more informed, equipped, and empowered to dig deeper into the soil of your local food economy. With you every step of the way, here's your host, Greg Peterson.
Today on the Urban Farm Podcast, we have Jodi Torpey, author of Blue Ribbon Vegetable Gardening and The Colorado Gardener's Companion, to talk about her experience with blue ribbon vegetables. Jodi is an award-winning vegetable gardener, craftsy gardening instructor, and founder and editor-in-chief of westerngardeners.com. In addition to the 2 books she authored, her garden writing also appears in digital and print media. Since 2010, she organized the annual Plant a Row for Hunger campaign in Denver. Welcome to the show today, Jodi.
Thanks, Greg. I'm so happy to be with you.
I'm glad you're here. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at now?
Well, I am happy to do that. I guess I got started when I was little. There are some pictures of me when I was not quite 2 years old, and I was helping with the gardening chores. So I was watering. Maybe I should say I was over-watering. But that's how I got my start. Those pictures remind me of what an early start I had. As I grew up, I always had something growing, and when I went away to college, I always had something on the windowsill at the dorm. And
nice.
After I graduated and living in all those, rental houses, I would always make sure that there was something growing. And some of the things that I remember was being able to grow tomatoes in a window box that I placed in the driveway because that was the sunniest spot.
Oh, nice.
To be able to grow.
Yeah.
And one year I remember growing all of my garden in hanging baskets off of a fence because that's the only place that the sun shone. So I just have continued to plant and grow, and along the way I decided to start writing about it. And I guess for about the last 12 or more years, I've been writing about plants and gardens and gardeners, and I've been writing about all kinds of gardening topics, from xeriscaping to saving water in the garden, attracting birds, bees, and butterflies. A lot to do with vegetable gardening, especially small space vegetable growing.
Yeah, the small spaces are really important for a lot of people because that's all a lot of us have.
And from my own experience, I've learned that you can grow just about anywhere if you are a determined gardener.
Yeah. Isn't that cool? So you you're editor-in-chief of westerngardeners.com. Tell me about that.
Well, I started that website in 2009 as a resource to help gardeners who, like me, grow in a really challenging climate. And it was just a wonderful outlet for all things I wanted to write about in growing everything from, like I said, xeriscaping to vegetable gardening. And that kind of blossomed into other kinds of writing and being able to write for other websites and other blogs as well, and really got me started on my newest book, the Blue Ribbon Vegetable Gardening.
Yeah, we're going to get to that one in a minute because that sounds like a lot of fun. But before we get there, you in your bio, it says an annual Plant a Row for Hunger campaign in Denver, Colorado. Tell me about that. That sounds fascinating.
Well, actually, Plant a Row for the Hungry is a national program that's sponsored by the Garden Writers Association. And as a member of the association, I started a local effort in my community to encourage gardeners to just plant a little extra in their vegetable garden and share those vegetables, herbs, and fruits with soup kitchen or a food pantry in their neighborhood to share that fresh bounty with people that might not have access to it.
Wow.
And every year I solicit donations from some of our local seed companies in the Denver area that donate thousands of packets of seeds, like Lake Valley Seed was a big sponsor this year.
Nice.
And those seeds I distribute around the community to anyone that wants them. They're free, and I send them off, and hopefully people will have good luck in their gardens, have enough bounty to enjoy and also to share with other people.
Wow. So are you involved with the on the other end of this process where they actually have the food and are distributing it as well?
No, I don't get that involved in that part of it. Most of the garden writers write about the Plant a Row effort and encourage gardeners to donate, but I've taken it a little farther in organizing the seed giveaways to make sure that people have what they need to start gardening.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, fantastic. So,
and every year, thousands of pounds of food is donated. So I think it's a pretty good effort.
Yeah, very good. So let's talk about your book. When I first saw the title, Blue Ribbon Vegetable Gardening, I just assumed that you were talking about how to grow, not necessarily how to compete, but you're really talking about how to compete there. So I guess my question is, why should gardeners try to win prizes for their homegrown fruits and vegetables?
Well, it connects us to our country's rich agricultural history. And I think that a lot of that has kind of gone by the wayside, that people go to fairs and they enjoy the midway and the carnival atmosphere
and the really bad food in the food booths.
Right. Enjoy everything that's on a stick and forget that the reason behind fairs dating back to the early 1800s was to help our new country that was trying to become self-sufficient grow the economy, and fairs were a vital part of that whole process, where farmers had the opportunity to go to fairs once a year, which was a big social event, and see other people, talk to other farmers, learn the newest methods for improving their own agricultural economy, as well as the local economy, and then the national economy too. And so these fairs provided that opportunity, and the competition is an important part of that, because that allowed the country's vast bounty of fruits and vegetables to become even more diverse, because people would go to the fairs and they would go home from them with the new information, and they would try to breed bigger and better crops and grow different fruits and vegetables, different introductions of fruits and all kinds of tomatoes and peppers and all the different vegetables that we enjoy today. And if it weren't for those fairs, we might not have that diversity.
Exactly.
So that's why I think it's important to keep that rich history alive by still competing and trying to win prizes and money and ribbons at the fair. Yeah,
so I have this image, and actually the reason that I go to the state fair is for the animals and the the vegetable displays. So that's actually the reason I'm going, and I go every year or two. And Can you just, for people that don't have a picture of what that might look like, can you give us a picture of what going to a state fair looks like for the food part of it?
Well, first, it's an incredible garden challenge. And for anyone who has been gardening for a while, vegetable gardening for a while, and wants to interject some new life into their gardening, the best way is to start early in the season with setting the goal of taking some of your fruits and vegetables to the fair to compete. Because it's a season-long effort to make sure that you can go to the fair with and enter with a plate of perfectly matched fruits or vegetables that are at the peak of perfection on the day of the fair.
Oh my gosh.
And we all know that vegetables don't grow
cooperate.
Yes, they don't always grow on schedule, and so it's a real challenge, and it's a fun challenge. The playing field is completely level, whether you're a beginning gardener or whether you've been gardening for a long time, because we all have to cope with those same challenges. But each fair will have a different set of categories for the fruits and vegetables.
Right.
And usually on their website there is what's called a show book or a premium guide or a fair book that has all of the rules in it. And it will have all of the categories of the fruits and vegetables and what you need to take to the fair. So, for example, you might need to take 5 hot peppers, and they all need to be the same length and the same color, and the stems trimmed to the same length. And then the judges will go through and compare the entries one against the other and award prizes and ribbons and money to the winners.
Well, I guess if you were really creative and could figure out how to grow something that was really maybe not in season and enter it in the fair, and you were the only one entered, you'd probably win, wouldn't one think?
Well, it depends if there's a category, because you can't win unless there's a category for you to enter. Yeah. So you can't get around the rules that way. Which is really funny, because at the Colorado State Fair one year, when I had taken some entries, a gardener came in and she had this huge Armenian cucumber. It must have weighed about 3 pounds. It was gigantic. And she thought she could enter it in the fair, but there wasn't a category for it, so she ended up carrying a 3-pound, giant cucumber with her all throughout the fair.
Wow. One of my favorites, by the way, Armenian cucumbers. I love to grow them. Yeah, one of my favorites. So what about, we've all seen the giant vegetables like pumpkins and cabbages and onions. Can you talk about that?
Oh, I'm happy to talk about that, because that's another way that we can connect to the history of fairs. If it weren't for one gardener, a guy from Nova Scotia, that drove all the way to Chicago for the 1893 World's Fair with his 383-pound pumpkin.
Wow.
To show off. We probably wouldn't have giant pumpkin contests today, because at that time, that was the largest pumpkin that anyone had ever seen.
Oh, my gosh.
And you can imagine that all the farmers that saw that 383-pound pumpkin probably went home and thought, I can grow a bigger pumpkin. And so the next year, for years after that, people tried to top that weight, and finally somebody did crack that code on the genetics of giant pumpkin seeds. And Howard Dill is his name.
Wow.
And Dill's Atlantic giant pumpkin seeds are still winning contests, and either the Dills themselves or a hybrid have set records that are now over 2,000 pounds of pumpkin.
For a pumpkin?
Yes, that's the new world record.
A ton?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So
how do you even move it to the fair?
That is a good question, because you have to have a forklift or a heavy gang of friends that are going to help you get that to the fair, because that's amazing.
No kidding.
And giant cabbage contests are really important. And at the Alaska State Fair in Palmer, Alaska, they have a giant cabbage weigh-off every year, which is one of the premier events of the fair, and the whole arena is packed with people waiting to watch cabbages get weighed. And the world record for the cabbage was set there a few years ago, like over 138 pounds.
For a cabbage?
For a cabbage. Each leaf can weigh as much as 3 or 4 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
How big is
amazing.
it? That's got to be obviously bigger than a basketball.
Oh, they're huge. They can be 2 feet across, just the cabbage itself.
Wow.
And then with all the leaves, it's pretty amazing to see that in action.
Uh-huh.
And the reason why is that they have really good soil, but they also get 20 hours of sunshine every day in summer.
Yeah.
And they use special breeds of giant cabbages to get to be that size.
There. And you also mentioned onions.
And onions, giant onion contests are really popular in England. Uh-huh. We have jumbo onion contests in fairs around the United States, but they have giant onion contests across the pond. And I think the world record for a giant onion is 18 pounds, 11 ounces.
Wow.
Yeah, that's an amazing pumpkin. And there's some pictures in my book of that giant pumpkin, or that giant onion, and it's incredible.
I have to tell you, I'm blown away over here. I had no idea.
Well, yes, the giant vegetable growing contests are really a separate breed of gardeners, because that is an exceptional challenge to be able to grow those giant vegetables. And it pays off, because for those contests, you don't get little cash prizes. They can be thousands of dollars in cash prizes.
Wow, you get giant cash prizes.
Yes. Yes. Wow. Giant prizes to match your giant vegetable.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, how cool. Really, truly, I'm blown away. This is incredible. So you've got my attention now. So
okay.
I'm going to be a first-time competitor at the coming up fall fair here in Arizona. Got some advice for me?
Well, I think that the best advice is to really study that show book.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
because that will be your guide to what you can take and what the judges will be looking for. And usually the judges are looking for entries that they can disqualify right off the bat, because either there aren't enough vegetables on the plate, the stems aren't trimmed, they aren't all the same color. So if you can get to the point where you've got that perfect, you match perfectly with what they're looking for, then you have a good chance to win. Got
it. So that it sounds to me like that probably speaks to selecting the best variety to grow as well. Right.
I recommend that people really think about the varieties or the cultivars that they want to plant to take to the fair. You can win by just going out into your garden the day of the contest and looking around and picking what looks good and taking that. Or you can start early in the season and really study up on the cultivars that have potential for being winners. You can look for clues in their names, like trophy tomatoes.
Oh, yeah.
That gives you a clue that somebody had good luck with that at a fair in the past, and it might be a winner for you. There's contender bush beans and prize winner leeks, and so those names give you a good insight into their potential.
Okay, what's the trick to having vegetables ready in time for a state fair?
Well, you do a little bit of horticultural hocus pocus.
Okay, good.
And I recommend that people start with the date of the fair in mind, and count back from that date and match the days of maturity of your vegetables to the day of the contest.
Oh, perfect.
And that will help you get a little closer to a prime planting date to make sure your vegetables and fruits are ready in time for the contest.
Yeah.
You just do a little bit of matching with those dates for every cultivar that you're growing.
Perfect. So what are judges looking for in winners?
Well, they're looking for the prime what they call the market ideal.
Mm-hmm.
And that hasn't changed since fairs and competitions started. That the judges are always looking for what is the market ideal. And you can ask yourself when you're looking at your vegetables, what would I buy at the farmer's market or at the grocery store? And it's just the perfect example of that tomato or that pepper, that particular hybrid or that heirloom that has all of the qualities, that it's the right size, it's the right color, it's fresh tasting. They often will cut into a piece of fruit to see if if the seeds are fully developed on the inside, and those are other ways that they can disqualify entries.
Got it.
They don't meet that standard.
Yeah. Wow. How about some best practices for growing prize-winning produce?
Well, growing a healthy garden is probably the key point.
Oh, yeah.
That having good soil to start with and spending a lot of time in your garden so that you can catch any problems that might crop up, that you can notice when there might be some insects that are getting to the vegetables, or, keeping up with your watering and definitely keeping up with fertilizing throughout the season.
Perfect. So, can you talk about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you might have learned from it?
So, just one time, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Because there's a lot of them that I could count, but because there have been a lot of disappointing gardening seasons. I guess that I heard this saying once, and I really glommed onto it, and it says that if you're not killing plants, you're not really gardening.
That's good.
So that really made me feel better, because that proves that you're trying, you're putting things in the ground, you're using your best practices, you're trying your hardest, and if things don't cooperate well, that's okay, because that's part of gardening.
Yeah.
And I really follow that philosophy, that I look at my whole landscape as a big experiment, and I see what works well and what I won't try again. And there are plants that I've tried that didn't do well in one spot, and then I try them somewhere else, and they have better success. So it's just a constant challenge to find putting the right plant in the right place.
Yeah. That's the experimenting part. I tell people here in the desert, growing food is one great big grand experiment. Get out there and grow.
Yes.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Yeah. So what do you consider your biggest success?
Well, writing that Blue Ribbon Vegetable Gardening book was a big success, I think, because I had really set my sights on trying to find a new approach to vegetable gardening that hadn't been covered before. And when I looked I wanted to enter some contests, and I looked for books on how to grow blue ribbon vegetables, and there was nothing that had been published in the last 100 years.
Oh, wow.
So I thought it was time to do that. So I think that was a big success. I had so much fun doing the research and writing that book, talking to gardeners all across the country and getting some of their best ideas for growing beautiful fruits and vegetables. But I think another part of that success is that I've been able to create a career that's based on what I absolutely love to do. So I love to write, and I love to grow things, and to make a career out of that, I think that was probably my biggest life success.
Yeah. Wow. How cool is that? So I want to talk about your book a little bit. Let's jump in here, given you mentioned it. Tell us about your book. How big is it? What do you cover? Like that.
Well, the Blue Ribbon Vegetable Gardening is, like, as I said, it was really a labor of love, and it includes a little bit of the history of fairs and how fairs got started in this country and how important they were to the nation's economy when we were still just newly independent from Great Britain and struggling to become self-sufficient. So there's a little bit of history, which I think lays the context for why fairs are so important today, and why we need to keep that heritage alive. And then there is a section on best practices for growing a healthy garden. And then the book has 10 chapters, and each chapter is dedicated to a different fruit or vegetable that just about anyone can grow in any space that they have. So these are beans and beets and tomatoes and peppers and squash, which are also the most common entries in state fairs or in fairs.
Yeah.
So each chapter goes into great depth on best cultivars and the best practices, a little bit of history on each vegetable, because I think that was fascinating to me, where vegetables came from, all these wild plants, and how they got tamed, but it took hundreds of years for that to happen. And then best practices for growing each one of those. And in each chapter, I talk to other gardeners around the country, some experts like the head of Dixondale Farms in Carrizo, Texas. They grow about 1 billion onion plants and sell those throughout the country. And yes, with a bee.
Wow.
And I thought, well, he might know a little something about onion growing.
Oh, no kidding.
So I tapped his brain on the best practices for growing great onions, and so that's included. And in one chapter, I talked to a grower in Iowa, Don Francis, who takes over 100 different categories of vegetables to the Iowa State Fair every year.
Whoa, really?
Yes, and he just has all kinds of ideas on how to compete with vegetables and grow great gardens. And I also talked to Jared Gettle with Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds.
Oh, good. Love them.
He's really into eggplant hunting, and so I tapped his brain for growing eggplants, and some other folks across the country on their ideas about competing and how to compete and why and what they get out of it. And so and there is a good portion of the cabbage chapter on how to grow giant cabbages, in case you're interested.
You know, we've done almost 100 podcasts, and this one's going to go down in history as the biggest podcast. Talking about the biggest onions and the biggest, pumpkins and cabbages. Wow. How cool.
And what's really fun about the giant pumpkins, at one contest that we have here in the Denver area, after the contest is over and they've declared a winner, they'll take one of the runners-up, maybe an 800 or 900-pound pumpkin, and raise it up on a crane.
Oh, my gosh.
About 100 feet in the air, and then just release it onto the asphalt. And when that 900-pound pumpkin hits the ground, it just sounds like an explosion.
Wow.
And pumpkin pieces and seeds go flying. And then as soon as all of that settles, all the kids run out there and try to grab those seeds so that they can try their hands at growing a giant pumpkin the next year. It's so much fun.
So, and here's another reason this episode is going down in history. You cracked James up. James is the editor here of the podcast. He's sitting over here just cracking up over that. That is so good. Wow.
Well, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
So what drives you?
Well, it drives me, besides making money, to buy more plants.
I got that problem too. I hear you.
Yeah, I think that it's helping inspire folks to plant a seed and trying to grow their own food. I really think that that's an important thing for people to be able to do.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of folks that I talk, I do a lot of public speaking around the country, and people, especially younger folks, will come up afterwards and ask me all kinds of questions about, this is my first year and I'm unsure about this and I don't know how to do that, and I'm afraid it's not going to work. And I just have to tell them it's okay. Seeds want to sprout, plants want to grow. Just don't be afraid. Plant your seeds. You'll be surprised, and the rewards there's so many rewards in doing it. And so I really want to inspire people to do that, to plant and grow their own food. And I love being able to help new gardeners solve those gardening issues.
Yeah.
And I love being out in the natural world. My garden is just alive with the plants, but also there are birds and bees and butterflies and other insects and squirrels and all kinds of things. And I love that part of the wildlife part of the gardening too.
Yay. So I'm all about education, and I have to know, is there one book that has been significantly impactful for you in this process?
Well, yes. There have been a lot of different books at different stages of my life, but when I was really starting to get into gardening as my hobby and my vocation and avocation, the book The Frugal Gardener by Catriona Erler really helped me get my first landscape started. She has so many great ideas in there on how to save money while you're gardening, because it can be an expensive hobby. But I bought a used copy of her book, That Frugal Gardener, and it really served me well, and it just inspired me so much.
Nice. So what one final piece of advice you have for our listeners?
Eat your vegetables.
Well, that's an easy one.
Well, and besides that, I think just jump in and get started. That don't be afraid to plant a seed and just get started. You'll learn more by doing than by reading or watching somebody else do it or anything else. Is nothing like experimenting in your own yard and your own garden with what you want to grow.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show and sharing your experience with us today, Jodi. It's been a treat chatting with you.
Well, thank you, Greg. I really appreciated the opportunity.
Absolutely. So how can our listeners get a hold of you?
Well, they can visit my website, westerngardeners.com, or they can email me at Jodi, Jodi, at westerngardeners.com, and I'll be happy to try to answer questions and help them with their gardens if possible.
Perfect. And your book, where can we find it?
Well, Blue Ribbon Vegetable Gardening is available online, but it's also available at local bookstores. And if you want to order a copy, just let them know, and they'll be glad to stock a copy for you.
Perfect. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast.
Thank you, Greg.
Did you know the best seeds for your garden don't come from the nursery? In fact, the seeds that will create the most robust and delicious fruits and vegetables come directly from your garden. This is because they are uniquely adapted to your growing conditions, better than anything you can buy from a fancy catalog or website. Through the magic of seed saving, it is quite possible to have the garden of your dreams. The best part is, saving your own seeds is surprisingly easy and fun. With a bit of instruction, anyone can become a seed-saving superstar. Let us teach you how in our free seed-saving webinar. Just text SEEDS to 33444 to sign up, or visit seedsavinghacked.org for more information. That's SEEDS to 33444. or visit seedsavinghacked.org.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.